Yes. The document that we're going to talk about today is the one that I passed out here to everybody in the meeting, but it's also on screen uh, for you all to see. And I would hope that everybody who is on the Zoom meeting has already seen this document. You've already had an email to you, but we're going to keep it up here on the screen for reference purposes for our discussion. The origin of this whole thing comes from the increasing difficulty that our churches in this area are having in securing pastoral leadership. It can be a gap of sometimes a year, 2 years before a pastor is found, and sometimes the covenant relationships don't work out very well at all. And often people don't want to come to this area because it's such a long drive from Richmond. There's been a lot of negatives circulating in the last several years now, to the point that we're all very aware of the difficulties of getting even supply pastors. And yet it occurred to Jim and Judy and I at one point that we have certain retired folks in the area who are quite available to help out with different things. And we looked around a little further, we found there are about 8 pastors and 2 persons who are candidates for commission pastor to be involved in this effort of helping supply pulpits at the very least, and maybe doing other functions within the churches to help them in their ministries. So this combination of the difficulty of finding pastoral leadership combined with a surplus of folks in the area who are willing to do something has led to this idea that maybe this organization, the NNPP, or this association, is not quite an organization, that's not biased us. But this association of several interested folks who would like to help out has created this idea that maybe this is a possibility for us as churches to take advantage of. So the purpose of our meeting today is really to focus on the question solely in that this is such a new idea. It's such an odd idea because it doesn't really exist anywhere else in our presbytery. Of having a local group sort of help out local churches. What are some of the advantages or disadvantages we might see in implementing this kind of an idea? Should it be approved at the presbytery level? I mean, we're in dialogue with the committee on okay. Out of that. It's on my turn.
I muted myself.
Have you been yourself? Okay, yeah. Thank you. That we're in dialogue with the committee on ministry on this because we don't want to do anything like sneaky. This is not meant to be sneaky. We're meant to be partners with committee on ministry on this. And we hope that COM can see us as a valued asset to help the churches of our area to move more quickly, finding, say, moderators of session, there's a vacancy, perhaps supplying pulpits, perhaps offering leadership in other areas of education, training of elders. The list goes on. There's a number of things that we could be doing to help out, especially on a short-term basis. A short-term basis, no, for a few months, maybe at the longest, maybe a month, who knows. But helping churches in their transitions and helping churches to meet the needs of leadership that they might not be able to get through covenant pastors. We really only have one church in the area that is viable at this point for having a full-time installed pastor. That's Campbell Church. They're in the position they can do that, but the other churches really are not in that position. So, enough of the introduction. I invite us now to ask questions, share thoughts, and let's get started. So I open up the floor for discussion. Brenda.
I know this is an association of Presbyterian pastors, but wouldn't it behoove the group to have other retired pastors that aren't necessarily Presbyterian that could help it and benefit as we do here at Mill.
That's certainly a possibility. One of the problems that we have, of course, is that pastors who are not Presbyterian are by and large not able to administer the sacraments in a Presbyterian church. And so we need to keep that distinction very clear. If there's a retired pastor who wants to be part of this group, certainly pulpit supply will be a possibility. If there's no real restriction about that for a one-off type pulpit supply. But if there becomes a pulpit supply engagement that goes longer than a few weeks, then there needs to be a clearing through committee on ministry in order to validate that person for that service. So there's some caution in there. It's not totally exclusive, Brenda, but it's not the same thing as, come on, join the party, the more the merrier. There is some filtering that needs to go on. There could be some limitations. Judy and Jim, I'm talking here. Yeah, here.
We have a Lutheran church at Campbell that shares our space. Lutheran pastors of the ELCA are permitted to observe sacraments and lead worship without any special permission giving. It's true of Congregationalist pastors, and there are 2 or 3 other UCC pastors. They would need to be approved if they're going to move beyond filling the pulpit on occasion. They would need to be on our presbytery's supply list for preaching and the pulpit supply list. So they would still need to be vetted, but there'd be no inhibition by our polity. So there are possibilities there.
Hey, Judy, anything that contribute? Good question.
Does everyone know how we do it here? Everyone know how it's done here at Milton?
Yeah, here at Milton, we have the issue of, I'm not here every single Sunday. I'm here 2 Sundays a month. And so we do have an arrangement with a Methodist pastor who comes up just twice a month. His name is Alan Rock. He's the chaplain at the Rappahannock General Hospital. And Alan, because he is on a regular preaching basis here, has been approved by the Committee on Ministry. He has gone through the vetting process, he has been approved. So that's a good example maybe of what we're talking about. So, yeah. Invite him to be part of the NNPP. Yeah.
But can he do communion? He's not allowed to do communion.
That is correct. It was a good question. Just let your imaginations work here. The question is, how do you see this NNPP being of benefit to your church? Forget global Christianity. Your congregation. Do you see that this could be a possibility?
I was going to mention that Frank Gasparini was at our church Sunday, and he preaches for you all on the 5th Sunday, I believe.
Yes.
He's an elder, not a pastor.
That's correct.
So when you say partnership with pastors, is he under that umbrella?
He is in terms of being a preacher. He has been validated by the Presbytery and put on the Presbytery's preaching list. So yeah, he counts. He counts. But to ask him, but he is not a commissioned pastor. To ask him to do the sacrament,
Karen has a question.
okay. And what would Karen's question be if?
No, I just made a comment. The letter on your screen can't be moved to view it. So it really doesn't serve any purpose because we can't read it.
Oh,
I can read it.
So you can move it up and down and read it?
yeah.
Then it's just me, never mind.
You can't. I have to
That's right, yeah, Judy's.
Yeah, nobody, you can move it and read it, but nobody else can. So
Right.
it does serve no purpose if it's just there. So if everybody's read it, it can be taken down, I guess. I don't know how to X out of it. That's okay. Just move on with the meeting. That's irrelevant.
Yeah, you can't exit out, but we can.
Whatever.
Let me ask a question, John Lee. Would it be helpful, is it necessary for us to show you on the Zoom call? Do you need to see that document, or can we simply take? Judy, you want to see what the feedback is?
Whatever, just move on.
People online, would you like the document to be taken down? Is it distracting? You'll have to show me in the chat, I guess. One not necessary.
What did you find out?
Got 3 not necessaries.
And me.
I counted you.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and take it down then.
Okay.
Well, yeah, can you do that?
Be quicker if you would, though.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, how do we stop sharing? Oh, well. Oh, well.
Can you just minimize it, clean top?
I'm going off this thing at 2 o'clock. I want to watch John's.
Karen, we're gonna leave that up there.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I can't quite find the right button, so. All right, so let's move on though. This is precious time, folks. Kathleen. Yes.
You had mentioned earlier that people were not really looking to go more than, say, a month, maybe 2 or 3 of the months, right? Well, under the concept section, when you're talking about services such as preaching and worship leadership, a lot of these churches go a really long time with their list. So if you're not gonna, fill the pulpit until they get a minister. That's not the purpose of this, right? My question.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay, one question at a time. Let's focus on that. How long term is our, say, filling the pulpit commitment? How long will that be? Jim?
I think there are 2 ways to look at this. If Tom did not have another pastor to fill in the other 2 weeks, then the church would need to find those folks. So you could have Tom, you could have a covenant pastor and use the partnership to identify those people who step in for the Sundays Tom may not be here. One of the benefits to this is the uninterrupted continuity of having worship, so that if a pastor was ill or needed to go on vacation, one of the aspects of working for retired pastors, most retired pastors do not want to fill pulpits 4 Sundays a month. The reason their availability is that the part-time fits their life. But it does mean that if you have a part-time pastor, you need backup. And sometimes that would be one other person like Milden, but a church might need more. You might have one pastor twice a month and 2 pastors once a month. What this model allows for is an infinite variety of ways of ensuring that your worship is not interrupted. And if you have a covenant pastor, a pastor that's beloved and lets you know they're moving to Wyoming, you're not thrown into disarray. Here is a company of pastors that would come together and work with you to ensure that your worship continues. So the continuity and the energy and the momentum are the stability is continues. That's one of the really important parts of this, is you don't have to be thrown into kind of a state of what are we going to do? With a little notice, we can ensure that there'll always be someone there for you. And I like to use the idea of ministerial services, whether it's a preaching or a pastoral care event, or you need to ordain or train your new elders. All of those things can be provided.
Does that help, Kathy? Okay, Judy, you said Karen has a question? Yeah.
You want me to read it?
Let's try.
No, it was a direct comment to Judy. It's not a question for the group.
Okay,
I have a question as far as, if this is allowed to happen and Presbytery approves of this, would it be something that our church, for instance, we're calling pastor after pastor after pastor, because without a pastor right now, could we go to you all and you say, okay, well, so-and-so is available for 3 weeks or every other week. So we would go to you instead of calling all these different people.
And all those people wouldn't be getting all those calls either.
I'm sure it drives in less too.
one thing I've come to appreciate over the years is the dread that falls upon the session when the pastor leaves. And I hear story after story of, I can't get anybody to come down to the 13th. Who's going to do it? This would help address that. But to your question, Kathy, I would hope that at some point, COM, Committee on Ministry, would so embrace the membership of the NNPP that we could go ahead and do extended engagements while the search is going on, and that we don't have to be, have contracts approved and all of that, because we're a trusted group. That would help. Yeah. Now, the stipulation I've learned is that if you're doing pastoral services for any length of time, it does need Committee on Ministry approval. In other words, a session needs to appeal to COM, saying, we want Pastor so-and-so to do this sort of thing for the next 2 months or 3 months. And that's good. I support that. But wouldn't it be nice if we had a blanket approval from COM as a group, so that we wouldn't have to go through all of that negotiation every time, but really we could easily fit in so that we could move on, keep the church programming going, the worship going, while the search goes on then for a pastor to come in and actually assume many of those responsibilities. Jim?
This would function as the interim process. That would be one of the things we would hope, so that you have available a variety of folks that could fill those interim tasks with you. I think that's another asset. I think the other thing that becomes obvious is there's some things that churches would do well to do together. If you have new officers, new elders, be nice for us all together and do that officer training. If your clerks want to get together and compare notes about clerking, if your treasurers want to get together and compare notes, then all of a sudden you're building colleagues. This is exactly what a presbytery is intended to do. So I think it's not totally unfair to say this is a small expression of a presbytery.
This is from Sally Kovacs. Would NNPP pastors be available to moderate session meetings?
Yeah, that's a concern.
I would hope so.
That's good.
That's one of the advantages of doing this, is that, again, finding moderators when there's no pastor can be as challenging as finding a covenant pastor. I live in Richmond. I'm not going to travel to Kilmarnock to moderate a session. If you have a pool of folks locally who are perfectly willing to do that, they're already members of Presbytery, they're trusted. We can, a session can simply say, we would like so-and-so to moderate our session, and if so-and-so is unavailable, this other person, and CLM then would have a record of who you're asking for and go ahead and formally grant it. This helps to save the administrative time to go to their designated person and start doing the hunt for a moderator. It can, again, speed up the process so much more quickly. I know, he's my amen child.
In reality, we don't need presbyteries' permission to behave in this way. We can collaborate with one another. There are one or two items in the document that require the presbyteries. I guess permission giving is the best term. I don't know if you want to jump into that piece now, because it is one of the things we need to ask you to respond to and act upon.
But yes. Let's continue with the questions and answers, because again, the whole purpose of this discussion is to start thinking in terms of what if there were an NNPP, how could it be helpful for us? So we covered moderating session, public supply, and what you got?
I wonder if the NNPP would be in a position to guide the service fees for the pastors. Whether it is coming as moderator in a session meeting, that would be a service fee, or preaching on Sunday morning, a service fee, a death of the church family, that would be an established fee. It doesn't need to be specific. For instance, to preach on Sunday morning, it doesn't have to be declared $200. But this group can say that we recommend $150 to $400, and now the burden is not placed on the visiting pastor to determine his or her own salary. That can be embarrassing in this kind of work that we do. If it's in the corporate world where I live, there is no embarrassment about that. But in the charitable organizations, that is a problem. But I would, and then establish and agree that this pastor would also receive mileage. So now that pastor that has to travel 45 miles from Richmond knows they're going to get 20 cents a mile plus this fee that a Presbyterian group has organized and suggested for each of the services that the Presbyterian Church potentially would need to provide.
Judy, do you have any comment on that? Yeah. I figure you're in CPR, you're fairly close to these kinds of questions.
The short answer would be yes, we could do that. And I think of the NNPP sort of like an a la carte menu versus a prefix menu, so that individual sessions can negotiate with persons that they call to serve them, what the fee will be. What I hear you saying is, would the NNPP issue a statement on what a range of fees would be?
Yes, guideline.
Could do that, sure.
And Presbytery does have recommendations on preaching and moderating session already in place, and I'm sure we should probably reflect those. We're not gonna try to be, we'll have the same pricing there, but there are other services that could be certainly come out of that, because we're willing to do so much more. These are good questions.
I have a question from St. James.
Yes, John.
Okay, let's get down to some basics. What's it gonna cost us? We are a congregation. We have a budget of around $16,000 per calendar year, and it's spent primarily on three things: minister's salary on a covenant, the property insurance, and the power bill. That's it. So if we get it, I understand the concept, but and maybe it's too early for the question, but at the same time, you can see in St. James's position, it means a lot. I'll be quiet.
John, I think I remember from a prior meeting, you mentioned that with the arrangement at your church, that there is some question about pastoral care, in that your pastor travels a great distance to come to be with you, that perhaps that area of pastoral care has gone wanting a little bit. I could see that within the pool of talent we have, that there might be somebody who'd be willing to contract with you all to do some of the pastoral care items, to help make up for what your regular covenant pastor cannot really do due to distance and time limitations. That would, of course, cost a little extra, but that's something that the session could work out with whoever you want to contract with. That's one example I can think of. Unless you were to reduce, I don't know. It gets into, if you have a relationship that ends, say the covenant pastor you have now ends his association with you, and you're in the position then of trying to find leadership. That's where the NNPP perhaps offers some, at least for temporary time, a collective of leadership for your church that would probably cost less than what you're paying at this point over the short term, but it allows you time to also be searching for a new covenant pastor who can step in and handle the responsibilities that pastor needs to do. Am I being helpful?
Somewhat, but I didn't hear any firm numbers, and so my imagination just goes wild, and that's not a good thing.
I think in all fairness, probably you have to do, maybe some of us will volunteer our activities where we are or called to do, but assume at the top that it would be a contracted relationship or a compensated relationship, just for starters. If it becomes volunteer, that's the pastor's choice. But otherwise, assume that there will be a compensation. So be brave to talk about it.
Yeah.
And Jim is saying amen. So,
but I do appreciate the service of fill-in pastors, or if this our covenant relationship ends for whatever good reason, I don't have to call the list of available pastors on the presbytery list, which is a lot of calls for nothing, because very rarely are they really available, has been my experience.
Yep. And
List of your group, there's basically the three of you, Frank Gasparini, who lives in the Northern Neck. Has any research been done for the other three churches that are on the other side of the river? For retired ministers in your area that could be added to your roster?
no,
See, Vicky.
could we do it? Yeah, yeah,
Vicky Murdoch.
yeah, Vicky Murdoch, the Tappahannock, yeah.
But she's not allowed to preach in our church because she was the retiring pastor.
Here we go.
And plus you bring up the sticky wicket. Yeah, Brett Reed, St. James. Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, that would be incredibly helpful because, you know, the reason that we are frustrated trying to get people to come from Richmond to us, we're gonna have the same frustration of getting from where we are over to say Brett Reed or St. James, because that's almost an hour trip on our part.
Yeah.
It's almost easier for them to draw somebody from Richmond than it is for us to go. So it'd be lovely if there were retired pastors in that area who could also be.
Across the river for us is Rappahannock, but across that river is Matthews, Middlesex, Gloucester. So, I mean, that's another maybe, I don't know, putting up rivers to search out.
We're getting into dangerous territory. We're crossing into another presbytery.
Yeah.
Don't mess with them over in people.
You say NNPP, Northern Neck excludes, Vicky.
No, no.
We think of Tappahannock as part of the greater Northern Neck.
They said, isn't it Northern Neck in Essex County?
It's in the greater northern neck.
Okay, I just.
We may need to do a name change. The GNNP.
The presbytery is divided into the areas. So our three churches and your three churches are part of that. From what Flo told us, that's our geographic area of the presbytery.
Yeah, in terms of the way we're divided up right now, yes, we're all part of the same group. Yeah. But mostly what's driving this and is geography. You know, we're just in a practical distance situation that say the churches that are surrounding Richmond are not. They have access and fairly easy drive time. We're just simply isolated, as we all know. We're not rural here, we're remote.
You know, I think it's sad when you think historically of our churches who had merged for years on, was the first Sunday of October, do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
We'd be in different churches and it would be filled with people. So our times different.
Yeah, we do have a shared history of a group of area Presbyterian churches worshiping together. That's true. Judy.
1 hour. You might want to address this with.
Yes, yeah, we wanted to conclude our meeting by 2 o'clock. So if anybody online has any question you want to ask, you know, please get together now. Brenda, you have a question?
You said this group costs in our church. And I would think that if some person that's in this group could be in charge of having the list of the names and the telephone numbers,
and all the churches know that's who I call. And, the other thing I wondered whether or not we can have a little bit of a treasury for those of us that may be better off than some other people. And have a little bit of money that, say, John could use if he got desperate or whatever. One way that we can truly help each other, at least financially, not taking over any of that, but as a help.
Very interesting. Hadn't even thought about a shared kind of assistance among our churches. That's a nice idea.
What is the feedback so far? What is the feedback? Because I see your letters dated June the 1st, and I wondered if you've had any feedback.
We have had feedback. Jim, you want to take that one?
No, Mike,
Okay.
I'm very, very anxious that each meeting to address this, so it takes time.
Okay. All right, so let's let that be our final question for now. Unless Judy has one from the source. Okay.
Is Tyler?
Well, while you're working on that, to address Ann's question, what was your question? Oh, okay. We have introduced this to the Presbytery, to Commission on Ministry and their subcommittee CPR. They've looked at it. Actually, tomorrow, they're going to sit down and really study this document and their feelings about this. And that's why we're so glad that Susan Steinberg has joined us today, because she chairs the subcommittee that's going to start with us first, and then move that along to the Committee on Ministry in the afternoon. So we're hoping that they improve. We hope they'll ask questions. We hope that there can be the beginning of a working relationship, because in the end, we're all trying to support each other and try to adjust to a need that was not here 5 years ago. Okay, we're dealing with something brand new, and so we're trying to respond to a need, and we discovered we have a resource. Why not put them together? That seems to be such a possibility. All right, yes.
May I just say quickly, pastors and clerks received a little document that we drew up of the participants. Pastors and clerks should have received a document that we drew up that lists the participants in the NNPP with the skills they have, the services they're willing to offer. And I think I put contact information in there, I can't remember. But if anyone would like that document, if you haven't seen it, let me know.
All right, yeah, we do have one action item we're asking of you today. And Jim, would you like to introduce that?
If I could come over the animated, just
Remember the clock is ticking.
okay. In this document on the pastor partnership, there is an ask that we have of the presbytery, and it has to do with allowing pastors to return and provide ministerial services from the churches from which they retired. Now, the policy that does not allow that is a policy of the Board of Pensions of our denomination. It's not a policy in our book of order. Our presbytery does indeed have guidelines that limit the services of a pastor after they retire from a church. So in the ask, in the document, we are asking the presbytery to advocate on behalf of this document before the Board of Pensions to allow an exception to that rule. And our argument is quite honestly the difficulty in finding pastors, when in fact we have pastors living in the communities right next door. But the policy says that they may not serve in the congregations from which they have retired. This is nuanced in many ways. For example, Tom has been away from St. Andrews for 7 years. And at some point, there should be a sundown on that, as we would imagine it. We've had this conversation with members of our presbytery staff to inquire what their sense of the timing is on this, and their response was, this is the rule. So Judy has been away from St. Andrews for 6 years. Vicky's been away from Tappahannock for 2 years. What is the rule on the length of time a person must be absent from their church before they can return and provide ministerial services? So the ask is, will the Presbytery, the James, advocate before the Board of Pensions to allow an exception to that rule for the NNPP? It's moving its way from the subcommittee. Judy sits on the subcommittee called CPR, Committee on Pastor Relations.
Church and pastor.
Church and pastors. And then it would go to the Commission on Ministry of our presbytery. So that's the pathway that we've outlined for this. And it can get complex because we have explored, Campbell and some of the elders there have explored, and I've had conversations with the Board of Pensions about the purpose and of that particular policy. It's informed by an IRS ruling that happened long ago. We've not been able to locate that, but we think it would be important if we're able to have that conversation with the presbytery or the board to suggest that policy is not an absolute policy, but certainly a policy where the presbytery should be allowed to exercise discretion and saying yes or no. And so we want the presbytery to get into this conversation. And I guess the last part of the ask is, and Judy and Tom, correct me if I'm out of line here, we'd like for the sessions, for your sessions, to look at the policy, one. We'd love for you to formally endorse it. And we'd love for you to note that endorsement in a communication with the presbytery. We think that will move us along, because now it's not one church. Campbell has endorsed the NNPP formally as an action of the session, and we're preparing other communications to go to the presbytery. But I think we would at least we want to do all we can to have that conversation. And if there are other churches involved, I think the presbytery would be more inclined to hear us out. So we'd love for you to have your session review it, endorse it, and communicate that endorsement to the presbytery. That would be the ask.
Say one thing,
So-
and I think it's gotten, it got almost as a punishment along the line that some ministers have been scolded because they even talked to a parishioner. Vicky and I were very good friends. She's had to stay away from me for 2 years. Is that really part of the Presbyterian? Let's see.
I'd like to make a comment, please. I have a document here called Relation of Former Teaching Elders to Congregations. This is Appendix D to the common procedure POJ. I'm just going to read 2 sentences. And it's important to understand that the term in POJ policy that we're talking about here is teaching elder, and teaching elder encompasses 2 different categories. It encompasses a duly installed pastor, and also it encompasses a temporary interim pastor. So the term teaching elder is used in the policy. It applies to either situation, either installed pastor or an interim pastor. And the two sentences I'm going to read, really, it's a concept pervades the entire document. This one is key. In the case of a teaching elder who retires in the same community as her former church, COM strongly recommends that the former teaching elder and her family become active in the work and worship of another congregation. Remaining in the same congregation leads to tensions and difficulties which no one intends, but nevertheless cannot be avoided. So it is clear, absolutely clear, that this policy relates to the situation where the departing pastor has to stay clear because there is right there and then a newly installed pastor or a newly appointed interim pastor. The policy does not apply to a church that has neither a newly installed pastor on board or assigned interim pastor. When you have neither, this policy does not apply. I challenge anyone to read it any different.
Much discussion awaits us. Thank you, Gary. Gary really has put in his sorting out these issues. So thank you, Gary. We're going to end our meeting at this point. We've been here for just about an hour. And what time is it?
2:05.
That's not bad. Gosh. All right. Thank you all for participating today, for questions. Please do follow up on Jim's suggestion, and we'll send a reminder out to you that if your session looks at this policy about the NNPP, all these suggestions, and really likes what you hear and would like to endorse it, you'll please communicate that to the Committee on Ministry. They just need to hear how we think about it in this here. If you all think it's a bad idea, well, don't endorse it, doggone it. Yeah. Do you have a suggested timeline, Judy?
Next month, before the next.
Okay.
Judy, we don't have a leader, we don't have a moderator for our session, so we can't send it out.
Yeah, I think let's suggest as soon as possible to send an endorsement, because this is not going to be decided upon.
Well,
All right.
I have a question, once again, about this. I understand the issue, it's been explained well, but can you tell us who should receive the endorsement? I understand it should come from the session, that's not a problem, but also the wording of that endorsement needs to, I would think, contain certain specific issues that are being endorsed. So that we can at least look somewhat intelligent on the subject, and who to send it to.
Yeah, okay, John, I think the short answer is send it to the moderator of the Commission on Ministry and care of the Presbytery Advocates. And
how do you get her email address?
Pardon?
How do you get her email address?
I would say send a hard copy to the Presbytery of the James.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, okay, we may be able to get that information to you in a follow-up communication, John. Except you don't have email, do you? Yeah, you do have email. Okay. Yeah, we can send out a follow-up communication to clarify. The other part of your question is, you have the document in front of you. We ask your sessions to look at it. You all may think the whole thing is wonderful, and you want to endorse the whole thing. You may see 2 parts of it you really like, say that, but then communicate. We have questions about this other side. I mean, this is the feedback that Committee on Ministry needs. It's not an up or down thing. We're creating something. And if you all see collectively a couple of hitches in this, Committee on Ministry needs to know that. It's all a dialogue. It's-
Can you send this to us via email, because we couldn't read the whole thing on the display?
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that, John.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. We will do that. Yeah, Tony's gonna send.
If your committee, your
Oh.
NNPP wants to be copied,
Gotcha.
I think you need to let the sessions know who to copy.
So we can also hear.
Yes, so you can also hear you're not blindsided, you're part of the discussion.
All right. I would like us to close with a word of prayer. Judy, would you be willing to pray for us as we depart? Thank you again, everybody, for coming. And for those who came in person, we have snacks. Judy.
Let's be in prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for the privilege of being leaders in the Church of Jesus Christ. We are very aware of the challenges of working with one another, with administering churches in ways that we don't all necessarily agree on. We ask you to send your Spirit to work on our hearts and minds, to help us to figure out ways that please you and benefit your church on the Northern Neck in the year 2023 in ways that are relevant and helpful and timely. We ask you, in short, to bless the work that we are trying to do. In Jesus' name we pray.